Hey everyone, before we dive into this incredible story, hit that like button and leave a comment with your theories about what is going to happen. Now, let us begin. The screaming started at exactly 3 in the morning. Alejandro Mendoza dropped his pen onto the mahogany desk and pressed both palms against his temples, feeling the familiar throb of exhaustion pulse through his skull. Through the intercom system that connected every room of his Polanco mansion, his daughter's cries echoed like a siren that no amount of money could silence. "Sofia, mi amor," he whispered to himself, "what is hurting you?" For 11 months, this had been his reality. Every single night, sometimes multiple times, his 5-year-old daughter would wake screaming, clutching her left foot and sobbing until her small body trembled with exhaustion. The finest pediatricians in Mexico City had examined her countless times. Specialists had been flown in from Guadalajara, Monterrey, even Houston. MRIs, X-rays, blood tests, psychological evaluations, everything had come back completely normal. "There is nothing physically wrong with your daughter, Señor Mendoza," they all said, with the same patronizing sympathy. "Perhaps it is psychological. The loss of her mother was traumatic." But Alejandro knew his daughter better than any doctor ever could. Sofia had been 3 years old when Carolina died in that terrible car accident on the Periférico. She had grieved, yes, but she had also healed with the remarkable resilience of childhood. These screaming episodes had started suddenly, 11 months ago, with absolutely no apparent trigger. And his gut told him something was terribly, terribly wrong. He walked down the corridor toward her room, passing the gallery of family photographs that lined the walls. Carolina smiled at him from a dozen frames. Beautiful, elegant Carolina, with her designer clothes and society connections. Everyone said he should remarry, that Sofia needed a mother figure. His own mother called weekly to suggest suitable candidates from the right families, women with proper backgrounds and impressive pedigrees. But Alejandro had no interest in another trophy wife. His only concern, his only priority, was finding out what was causing his daughter's suffering. "Señor Mendoza!" The night nurse, a stout woman named Gertrudis, who came with impeccable references from the finest families in Polanco, met him at Sofia's door with panic evident in her eyes. "I cannot calm her down. She keeps saying her foot is burning, but I have looked and there is nothing. No redness, no swelling, absolutely nothing that I can see." Alejandro pushed past her into the pink princess bedroom that had cost more than most people earned in an entire year. Sofia sat in her canopy bed, her dark curls matted with sweat, tears streaming down her flushed cheeks as she rocked back and forth. "Papa!" She reached for him with desperate arms. "It hurts! It hurts so much!" He gathered her small body against his chest, feeling her heart racing like a trapped bird. Her nightgown was soaked through with perspiration, and her tiny fingers gripped his shirt with surprising strength. "Show me, Princesa. Show Papa exactly where it hurts." She pointed to her left foot, to the arch just below her toes. Alejandro examined it carefully, as he had done hundreds of times before. The skin looked perfect, smooth, pink, healthy, no marks, no bumps, no swelling, no explanation whatsoever. "There is nothing there, mi amor," he said gently, hating the words even as he spoke them. "Your foot looks completely fine." "No, it burns! Something is inside!" Sofia's voice rose to a shriek that pierced his heart. "Make it stop, Papa! Please make it stop!" He held her until the sobbing gradually subsided into whimpers, until her exhausted body finally surrendered to fitful sleep. Then he laid her carefully on the pillow, tucked the blankets around her small form, and walked out of the room, closing the door with a soft click. Gertrudis stood in the hallway, wringing her hands nervously. "Señor, perhaps a sedative would help her sleep through the night? There are medications specifically designed for children with sleep disorders." "You are dismissed." The words came out cold and final. Gertrudis blinked in surprise. "But, Señor, I was only suggesting—" "I said you are dismissed. Collect your belongings and leave my house. My assistant will send your final payment." He did not wait for her response. This was the 12th nanny he had fired in 11 months. Some had been incompetent, some had been indifferent, and some, like Gertrudis, had suggested medicating his daughter into silence rather than actually finding the cause of her pain. At 7 in the morning, Alejandro sat in his home office, staring at his laptop screen without truly seeing it. The Mendoza Corporation's quarterly reports awaited his review. 3 major acquisitions required his immediate attention. International investors were waiting for his decisions on projects worth millions. But all he could think about was Sophia's face, twisted in agony, and his own complete helplessness in the face of her suffering. His phone buzzed, a message from his executive assistant Daniela. "Sir, the agency sent another nanny candidate. She is different from the others. No formal childcare training, but she has medical background. Should I schedule the interview?" Alejandro typed back with one hand while rubbing his burning eyes with the other. "Send her in at 9. And Daniela, cancel all my meetings for today." The response came immediately. "All of them?" "Sir, the Japanese delegation, all of them." He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. The Mendoza Corporation had made him one of the wealthiest men in all of Mexico. His real estate empire spanned from Cancun to Tijuana. His name opened doors that remained permanently locked to ordinary people. Yet none of it mattered, none of it meant anything at all, if he could not help his own daughter. At precisely 9 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Alejandro watched on the security monitor as his housekeeper, Lupita, opened the front door. The woman standing on his doorstep was not at all what he had expected. The previous candidates had arrived in designer clothes, with perfect hair and polished smiles, eager to impress the famous billionaire with their credentials. This woman wore simple dark pants and a white blouse that had clearly seen better days. Her brown hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her face held no makeup, except perhaps a touch of lip balm. But it was her eyes that caught his attention and held it. Dark, intelligent, and haunted by something he recognized immediately. The unmistakable look of someone who had suffered deeply and somehow survived. He straightened his tie and walked to the grand foyer, arriving just as Lupita escorted the woman inside. "Señor Mendoza, this is Valentina Reyes, from the agency." The woman met his gaze directly, without the nervous flutter or exaggerated deference he usually received from job candidates. There was dignity in her posture, a quiet strength that seemed at odds with her humble appearance. "Thank you for seeing me, Señor Mendoza." Her voice was calm and professional. "I understand you have had difficulty finding suitable care for your daughter." "That would be quite an understatement." He gestured toward his study. "Please, let us talk." He led her down the corridor, noticing how her eyes moved over the expensive artwork and crystal chandeliers with something like clinical detachment, not impressed, not envious, merely observing and cataloguing. Interesting. In his study, he offered her a seat across from his desk, deliberately positioning himself in the power position, a negotiation tactic he had used thousands of times in business dealings. But Valentina Reyes sat as if they were equals meeting for coffee, her back straight, her hands folded calmly in her lap. "Your resume is unusual," he began, picking up the single page the agency had sent. "No formal childcare training, no previous nanny positions anywhere. Your work history shows various clinic positions, but the references are vague." "I know." She did not flinch or look away. "I had reasons for leaving my previous career. Personal reasons that I would prefer to keep private. But I assure you, Señor Mendoza, I am more than capable of caring for a child. My daughter requires significantly more than basic care." Alejandro set the paper down and fixed her with his most intimidating stare. "She has a medical condition that no specialist has been able to diagnose. She experiences severe pain episodes, primarily at night. The last 12 nannies have completely failed to manage the situation." Something flickered in Valentina's dark eyes. "Tell me about the pain. Where exactly does she feel it? How does she describe the sensation?" "Her left foot. She says it burns, that there is something inside." He heard the frustration in his own voice. Every test comes back negative. The doctors all believe it is psychological. And what do you believe, Señor Mendoza? The question surprised him. No one had asked him that before. They simply accepted the medical opinions and moved on to suggesting therapists, counselors, medications. I believe my daughter is not lying, he said slowly. I believe something is genuinely causing her pain, and I believe everyone has been looking in completely the wrong place. Valentina nodded slowly, and something shifted in her expression, a sharpening of focus that reminded Alejandro of surgeons he had met during Carolina's final hours at the hospital. May I ask some questions about the onset of her symptoms? When exactly did they begin? Was there any triggering event that day? 11 months ago. And no, nothing unusual happened. She went to bed perfectly fine and woke up in the middle of the night screaming for the first time. He paused, studying her face. You seem very interested in the medical details for a nanny candidate. I told you I have medical background. Her tone remained perfectly even. And your daughter's well-being would be my primary responsibility. How can I properly care for her if I do not fully understand what she is experiencing? For several long moments, Alejandro said nothing. Something about this woman unsettled him. Her composure, her direct manner, the way she asked questions that no one else had thought to ask. She was clearly educated far beyond her current station. The way she spoke, the precision of her vocabulary, suggested someone who had once operated in much higher professional circles. What happened to you? The question came out before he could stop it. What made someone with your obvious intelligence and education end up applying for a nanny position through a budget agency? A shadow crossed her face. There and gone so quickly, he might have imagined it. Everyone has a past, Señor Mendoza. I would not presume to ask you to share yours with a complete stranger. She stood and walked toward the window, looking out at the manicured garden below. He noticed her hands, long-fingered, elegant, with small calluses on the palms and fingertips. Not the hands of someone who had spent her life in domestic service. I will be completely honest with you, she said quietly. I need this job. Not just for the money, but because I need to feel useful again. I spent many years helping children, and circumstances beyond my control took that away from me. Your daughter needs someone who will actually listen to her pain instead of dismissing it. I can be that person. She turned to face him. Give me 1 week. If I cannot help her, if she shows absolutely no improvement, you can dismiss me without any payment. But if I can help, you are very confident for someone with no references. I am confident because I have seen things that other people miss. Her eyes met his without wavering. Sometimes the most obvious solution is invisible to those who are looking too hard in the wrong direction. Against every instinct that had made him successful in business, against every rule of careful vetting and thorough investigation, Alejandro found himself nodding. 1 week, you start tonight. You start. Valentina unpacked her small suitcase in the modest servant quarters adjacent to the mansion's main house. The room was larger than her entire apartment in the Doctores neighborhood, a fact that might have amused her if she had any humor left in her soul. She placed her few belongings in the dresser. Practical clothes, a dog-eared paperback she had read 17 times, and a small leather case that she tucked into the back of the bottom drawer, hidden beneath folded sweaters. No one could know what was in that case. No one could know who she really was or what she had once been capable of. Through the window, she could see the mansion's second floor, where soft light glowed behind pink curtains. Sophia's room. In a few hours, that little girl would wake up screaming, and every other nanny who had held her would simply try to comfort her back to sleep. But Valentina knew better. She had known the moment Alejandro Mendoza described the symptoms, the burning sensation, the precise location, the sudden onset. Everything pointed to something that most doctors would never think to look for, because it was rare, because it was deliberate, because it required someone with very specific knowledge to have placed it there in the first place. A chill ran down her spine. She had encountered this before, only once, 5 years ago, in a case that had destroyed absolutely everything she had worked for. The memory rose unbidden. The operating room, the child on the table, the accusations that followed when she tried to tell the truth about what she had discovered. No, she would not think about that now. This was different. This was her chance to make things right, even if no one ever knew the full story of what had happened to her. At dinner time, Lupita brought a tray to her room. "The Signor thought you might want to rest before tonight. Sophia usually wakes around 3, sometimes even earlier. Thank you, but I would prefer to meet her now, before she goes to sleep. Building trust takes time, and I would rather not be a complete stranger when she needs comfort." Lupita raised an eyebrow. The other nannies preferred to keep some distance. They said it made the night shifts easier emotionally. "The other nannies are not here anymore." She found Sophia in the playroom, surrounded by expensive toys that looked largely untouched. The little girl sat by the window, drawing something on a large sketch pad with intense concentration. Her dark curls fell across her face, hiding her expression from view. "Hello, Sophia." Valentina knelt beside her, keeping her voice soft and gentle. "My name is Valentina. I'm going to help take care of you." The child looked up, and Valentina's heart clenched with recognition. Those eyes, huge, brown, filled with exhaustion and something like resignation. She had seen that look before, in children who had learned through bitter experience that adults could not be trusted to fix what was broken. "Are you going to make me take medicine?" Sophia's voice was barely a whisper. "The last lady wanted to give me medicine to sleep. No medicine, I promise you." Valentina settled onto the floor beside her, ignoring the dust that would surely stain her pants. "Can I see what you are drawing?" Sophia hesitated for a moment, studying Valentina's face as if searching for deception. Then she turned the sketchpad toward her. The drawing showed a little girl lying in bed with flames shooting up from her foot. The colors were violent, orange, red, black, and the expression on the drawn face was pure agony. "This is how it feels," Sophia said. "But nobody believes me. They all think I am making it up for attention. I believe you." The words came out with more intensity than Valentina had intended. She softened her tone. "Can you show me exactly where it hurts? Point to the spot on your real foot." Sophia looked at her with sudden hope. The first genuine emotion Valentina had seen cross her young face. She pulled off her sock and pointed to a spot on the arch of her left foot, just below the third toe. "Right here. Right. It burns like fire, especially at night when I'm trying to sleep. And sometimes I feel something moving inside, like a tiny bug crawling under my skin." Valentina leaned closer, examining the area with practiced eyes. The skin looked completely normal at first glance, just as every doctor had reported. But she was not looking at the surface. She was looking for the subtle irregularities that only someone with her specialized training would recognize. There, a barely visible discoloration, no larger than a pencil tip, and beneath it, the faintest ridge under the skin, so slight that it would never show up on an X-ray taken at the standard angles. Her blood ran cold. "Sophia, I need you to be very brave and answer some questions for me. When exactly did your foot start hurting? Do you remember if anything happened that day?" The little girl scrunched up her face in concentration. "It was after Tia Mariana's party. She is not really my aunt, but she is Papa's business friend. I fell asleep at her house because the party went very late, and when I woke up the next day, my foot hurt." "Did anyone touch your foot at the party? A doctor, maybe? Or someone who said they needed to look at something?" "I do not remember anything like that. I was sleeping." Sophia's eyes widened with hope. "Do you know what is wrong with me? Can you fix it?" Valentina forced herself to smile calmly, even as her mind raced through terrifying possibilities. "I think I might know what is causing your pain, but I need to talk to your father first. And then we need to do some very special tests. Can you trust me, Sophia?" The little girl studied her face for a long moment, an unnervingly adult assessment from such a young child. Then she nodded slowly. "You are different from all the others. You look at me like I am real." Those words hit Valentina harder than she expected. She reached out and gently squeezed Sophia's small hand. "You are real, and your pain is real, and I am going to help you. That is my promise." She found Alejandro in his office, reviewing documents with the focused intensity of a man trying to distract himself from impossible problems. When she knocked on the open door, he looked up with barely concealed irritation. "Is something wrong already? She has not even gone to bed yet." "I need to speak with you privately, Señor Mendoza. It is about your daughter's condition." Something in her tone made him set down his pen immediately. "You have been here less than 3 hours." "I know, but I found something." She stepped inside and closed the door firmly behind her. "I believe there is a foreign object implanted beneath the skin of your daughter's foot. Something very small, probably metallic, possibly with an electronic component." Alejandro stared at her as if she had announced the presence of aliens in his garden. "That is completely impossible. She has had X-rays, MRIs. Were any of those scans focused specifically on the arch of her foot at oblique angles, or were they standard pediatric protocols designed to identify common injuries and conditions?" His silence was answer enough. "Señor Mendoza, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to answer me honestly." Valentina gripped the back of the chair in front of his desk, steeling herself. "Who would benefit from your daughter being in constant pain? Who would want you distracted, exhausted, unable to focus on your business dealings?" The color drained from his face. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "I am suggesting that your daughter's condition is not medical. It is deliberate. Someone placed something in her foot, something designed to cause pain that cannot be easily identified or removed. And they did it 11 months ago, at a party hosted by someone named Mariana." For a long moment, Alejandro did not move. Then he stood slowly, his hands trembling with barely contained rage. "Mariana Villanueva, my head of operations. She has been with the company for 15 years. She was Carolina's closest friend since childhood." His voice cracked. "Are you telling me she deliberately hurt my daughter?" "I am telling you what Sophia told me and what I observed with my own eyes. The tests will tell us the rest." Valentina pulled a piece of paper from her pocket, a list she had written while waiting for this meeting. "These are the specific imaging protocols I need you to request. A pediatric radiologist with experience in microimplants would be ideal, but any competent technician using these parameters should find what we are looking for." Alejandro took the paper and stared at it. His businessman's mind was clearly processing, connecting dots that had always been there but completely invisible. "How do you know this?" "Ah!" His eyes snapped to hers. "How does a nanny know what imaging protocols to request for detecting implanted devices?" The question hung in the air between them. Valentina had prepared for this moment, had rehearsed her deflection. But looking at his face, the fear, the hope, the desperate need for answers, she found herself unable to lie completely. "I was a doctor once, a pediatric surgeon. I lost my license 5 years ago after I reported finding a similar device in a patient and was accused of fabricating evidence." She kept her voice steady, clinical. "The people who did this are very powerful. They destroyed my career rather than face investigation. But I know what I saw then, and I know what I am seeing now." 3 hours later, they sat in a private waiting room at Hospital Angeles Pedregal, one of the most exclusive medical facilities in all of Mexico City. Sophia had been remarkably brave during the imaging process, especially when Valentina held her hand and explained exactly what the big machines were doing. Now the little girl slept on a cushioned bench, her head in her father's lap, while Alejandro stroked her hair with mechanical movements. His eyes were fixed on the door. The door opened. Dr. Fuentes, the radiologist, entered with a tablet in his hands and an expression of barely contained shock. "Señor Mendoza, I need to show you something." He sat across from them and turned the tablet so they could see the screen. "Using the specialized protocols provided, we found this." The image showed a cross-section of Sophia's foot, magnified many times, and there, clearly visible, was a tiny cylindrical object embedded just beneath the surface of the skin. It appears to be some kind of micro-device. Based on the imaging characteristics, I would estimate it contains a small battery and possibly a receiver. Doctor, Fuentes swallowed visibly. Someone implanted this in your daughter's foot, Señor Mendoza, and based on its position near a nerve cluster, I believe it is designed to deliver small electrical impulses, enough to cause significant pain without leaving any external marks. Alejandro's face had gone completely white. Can you remove it? It is a delicate procedure, but yes. I would recommend a pediatric surgeon with microsurgical experience. Alejandro turned to Valentina. His eyes held something new now, fierce, burning gratitude. How did you know? Because I have seen it before. She walked to the window, looking out at the city lights of Mexico City spread below. 5 years ago, I operated on a child from a wealthy family in Monterrey. I found a similar device. When I reported it, I was accused of planting it myself to extort money. My license was revoked, my reputation destroyed. She turned back to face him. Someone is using these devices to hurt children of powerful families. I do not know why. Extortion, revenge, corporate sabotage. But I know that whoever did this to Sophia is connected to whoever destroyed my life. And now, finally, I have proof that I was telling the truth all along. The surgery was scheduled for the following morning. Valentina spent the night in Sophia's room, sitting in a chair beside the bed, while the little girl slept peacefully for the first time in 11 months. Just before dawn, her phone buzzed with a message from a blocked number. You should have stayed hidden, Valentina. Some truths are better left buried. Someone knew she was here. Someone was watching. At 8 o'clock, Alejandro appeared. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, but steel was in his posture. I spent the night making calls. Mariana has been my head of operations for 15 years. She managed everything after Carolina's death. He handed Valentina a folder, financial records, hidden accounts connected to a Swiss medical research firm, the same firm that developed the micro-implant technology. Valentina flipped through the documents, regular payments increasing around when symptoms began. She was being paid to test these devices. Your daughter was a test subject. It gets worse. His jaw tightened. The Swiss firm is partially owned by competitors I have been outmaneuvering for years. Corporate sabotage using a child. The surgery succeeded completely. Dr. Ortiz removed the device, a cylinder no larger than a grain of rice. The moment it was out, Sophia reported that the constant discomfort she had grown accustomed to had completely vanished. It was always there, she told her father in recovery, wonder filling her voice. I forgot what normal felt like. Alejandro held his daughter and wept. Valentina watched from the doorway. That evening, Alejandro made calls to lawyers and security consultants. Mariana left the country this morning. Private jet to Switzerland. Someone warned her. Your mother, Valentina said quietly. I think she may be connected to all of this. The next morning brought Elena Mendoza de Vega to the mansion. Tall, elegant, imperious. She recognized Valentina immediately. The disgraced doctor from Monterrey, the one accused of implanting devices in children. Accused and never convicted. Because I was innocent. The confrontation was brief and brutal. Elena knew details about the Monterrey case that should have been sealed. Her connection to Lucia Carranza, grandmother of the Monterrey victim, could not be coincidence. Leave, Alejandro told his mother. Do not return until you are ready to tell me the truth about what you knew and when you knew it. Elena stared with pure venom, then turned to Valentina. You think you have won something here? But you have no idea what you have started. These people will not stop until everyone you care about is destroyed. The door slammed behind her. In the silence that followed, Sophia's small voice broke through. Is Abuela a bad person? Alejandro knelt and gathered his daughter in his arms. I do not know, Princesa, but I promise you, I will find out the complete truth, and no one will ever hurt you again. Over his daughter's head, his eyes met Valentina's. In them, she saw determination, gratitude, and something else entirely, a question, an invitation, a promise of things yet unspoken between them. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The truth was finally beginning to come to light, and nothing in any of their lives would ever be the same again. Later that night, after Sophia had been tucked into bed and the mansion had grown quiet, Valentina stood on the terrace overlooking the gardens. The lights of Polanco spread out below like a carpet of fallen stars, beautiful and cold. She had spent 5 years hiding, 5 years convinced that the truth would never matter, that the powerful people who had destroyed her would never face consequences. But now everything had changed. She had proof. She had an ally with resources and determination. And most importantly, she had a reason to keep fighting. A little girl who looked at her like she was real, like she mattered, like she could be trusted. Footsteps approached from behind. She did not need to turn to know who it was. "You should rest," Alejandro said quietly, coming to stand beside her at the railing. "Tomorrow will be difficult. There are lawyers to meet, investigators to brief, a conspiracy to unravel. I do not think I could sleep even if I tried." They stood in silence for a long moment, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. So much had happened in such a short time. Less than 48 hours ago, she had been a stranger at his door, a desperate woman with a mysterious past and no real credentials. Now they were bound together by secrets and danger, by a shared determination to protect an innocent child and expose those who had harmed her. "Thank you," he said finally. "Those words feel completely inadequate, but I do not know what else to say. You saved my daughter when no one else could. I did what any decent person would have done." "No." He turned to face her, and in the dim light she could see the intensity in his eyes. "You did what no one else was willing to do. You risked exposure, risked your safety, risked everything to help a child you had never met. That is not ordinary decency. That is something rare and precious." Valentina felt her heart skip unexpectedly. She had spent so long building walls around herself, protecting herself from hope and connection. But something about this man, something about his fierce love for his daughter and his willingness to fight for the truth, was making those walls feel very fragile indeed. "We should focus on the investigation," she said, trying to steady her voice. "There is still so much we do not know." "I know." He reached out and gently touched her arm, the first physical contact between them that was not strictly necessary. "But I also know that I could not have done any of this without you. And whatever comes next, I want you to know that you have a place here. Not just as Sophia's caregiver, but as part of this family's fight for justice." She met his eyes, and for just a moment the walls came down completely. In that look, they both acknowledged what was growing between them, something that had nothing to do with employment or convenience, something that felt dangerous and necessary all at once. "We will find the truth," she said softly, "all of it, no matter where it leads. Together." The word hung in the air between them, a promise and a beginning. Above the city of Mexico, the stars burned cold and distant, but here on this terrace, something warm and powerful was taking root. The road ahead would be treacherous. Enemies lurked in the shadows, powerful and ruthless, but they were no longer alone in the darkness. Together, they would face whatever came next, and somehow, against all odds, they would win. 3 weeks had passed since the surgery, and Sophia was a completely different child. She laughed now. Real, genuine laughter that echoed through the halls of the Polanco mansion like music. She slept through the night without a single nightmare. She ran through the gardens with boundless energy, her dark curls flying behind her, her small voice calling out to Valentina to watch her latest discovery. A butterfly, a flower, a cloud shaped like a rabbit. "She is like a flower that finally found sunlight," Lupita remarked one morning, watching from the kitchen window. I had forgotten what her smile looked like. Valentina smiled too, though her heart remained guarded. Every day brought new evidence against the conspiracy that had hurt Sophia and destroyed her own career. Alejandro's investigators had traced financial connections between Mariana Villanueva, the Swiss medical firm, and a shadowy network of corporate interests. They had identified at least 3 other children from wealthy Mexican families who had experienced similar mysterious symptoms, all of them linked to events organized by people in Elena Mendoza's social circle. But with each revelation came new danger. The threatening messages had continued, growing more specific and more menacing. Someone had broken into Valentina's old apartment in Doctores, ransacking it completely. A journalist who had begun investigating the Swiss firm died in a suspicious car accident on the highway to Querétaro. "They are cleaning up loose ends," Alejandro said grimly during one of their late-night strategy sessions. "We need to move faster." But moving faster proved difficult when the enemy struck from an unexpected direction. It began with a phone call from Alejandro's lawyers. A formal complaint had been filed with the Medical Licensing Board, accusing Valentina of practicing medicine without a license by diagnosing Sofia's condition. The complaint included detailed documentation of her interactions at Hospital Angeles, presented in a way that made her involvement sound criminal rather than life-saving. "This is absurd," Alejandro raged, pacing his office while Valentina sat frozen in her chair. "You saved my daughter's life. Anyone with eyes can see that." "The law does not care about intentions." Valentina's voice was flat, hollow. "I performed actions that only a licensed physician should perform. I ordered specific imaging protocols. I interpreted the results. Technically, they are correct. I broke the law. Then we will fight it. My lawyers are the best in the country." "Your lawyers cannot change the fact that I lost my license 5 years ago for exactly this kind of accusation." She stood and walked to the window, her reflection ghostly against the night sky. "Do you not see what they are doing? They are using my past to discredit everything we have discovered. If I am arrested, if I am put on trial, every piece of evidence connected to me becomes tainted. I will not let them take you." The intensity in his voice made her turn. In the weeks since that first desperate night, something had grown between them, something neither had named or acknowledged directly. It lived in the lingering glances across the dinner table, in the accidental brushes of hands when they both reached for the same document, in the way his voice softened whenever he spoke to her alone. "Alejandro," she used his first name carefully, tasting it. "You have to think about what is best for Sofia, for your company, for the investigation. If my presence here becomes a liability, stop." He crossed the room in 3 strides and stood before her, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his brown eyes. "You are not a liability. You are the reason my daughter is alive and happy. You are the reason I finally have hope that justice will be done. And you are—" He stopped, his jaw tightening. "I am what?" "Important." The word came out rough, almost pained. "You are important to me, not just because of what you have done, but because of who you are. I watch you with Sofia, and I see a woman of extraordinary compassion and courage. I listen to you analyze evidence, and I see a brilliant mind that refuses to surrender." Ahi! The doorbell rang, shattering the moment. They both stepped back, the spell broken. Alejandro's phone buzzed immediately with a message from the security team. "Police vehicles at the gate. They have a warrant." Valentina felt the blood drain from her face. "They are here for me. They will have to go through me first." "No." She grabbed his arm as he moved toward the door. "If you obstruct them, they will use it against you, against the investigation, against Sofia." Her voice broke slightly. "Please, let me handle this. Valentina, take care of her." She held his gaze, pouring everything she could not say into that look. "Promise me, no matter what happens, you will protect her and you will find the truth." "I promise. But this is not over. I will get you out. I will—" The pounding on the front door echoed through the mansion. Somewhere upstairs, Sofia's voice called out in confusion, asking what was happening. Valentina straightened her shoulders, smoothed her hair, and walked toward the foyer with her head held high. If they wanted to arrest her, she would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her afraid. The next 72 hours were the longest of her life. She was processed at the police station, photographed, fingerprinted, and placed in a holding cell while the prosecutors built their case. The charges were serious: practicing medicine without a license, fraud, and, most devastatingly, child endangerment. The complaint alleged that her diagnosis and intervention had actually harmed Sophia, that the device found in her foot was planted by Valentina herself as part of an elaborate extortion scheme. "They are using the exact same playbook from Monterrey," she told her court-appointed lawyer, a young woman named Carmen, who seemed overwhelmed by the complexity of the case. "They accuse me of planting the evidence so that no one will believe the evidence is real. The problem is they have documentation," Carmen said apologetically. "Medical records showing you lost your license for similar accusations. Testimony from your former mentor stating you exhibited signs of delusional thinking. Financial records suggesting you were in desperate straits when you applied for the nanny position. All of it is twisted. All of it is taken out of context. I believe you. But believing and proving are different things." On the third day, Alejandro came to visit. They sat across from each other in a sterile interview room, a guard watching from the corner. "Sophia cries for you every night," he said, his voice rough. "She does not understand why you left." The words cut deeper than any accusation. "Tell her I am coming back. Tell her this is just a misunderstanding that the adults need to fix." "Is it a misunderstanding?" He leaned forward, his eyes boring into hers. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like a coordinated attack by people with unlimited resources and absolutely no conscience." "It is both." She allowed herself a small, bitter smile. "A misunderstanding in the sense that I am innocent. An attack in the sense that they know I am innocent and do not care. I found something." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "My investigators traced the complaint back to its source. The paperwork was filed by a law firm in Monterrey, the same firm that represented the Carranza family 5 years ago when they accused you." Her heart stopped. "The Carranzas are behind this." "Not directly. The firm acts as a front for a larger organization. We are still tracing the connections, but there is a name that keeps appearing in the documents." He paused. "Dr. Eduardo Ramirez, her former mentor. The man who had taught her everything about surgery, who had stood beside her during the most difficult cases of her career, who had then turned around and destroyed her with his testimony. He is still alive, very much so, and very much involved in whatever this network is doing. My investigators believe he may have been the one who actually developed the implant technology, or at least refined it for use on children." The revelation hit her like a physical blow. Eduardo had been the one who identified the device. Eduardo had been the one who helped her understand what she was seeing. And then Eduardo had been the one who claimed she was delusional, who testified that she had fabricated the entire thing. "He set me up," she breathed, "from the very beginning. He used me to test the detection protocols, and when I proved they worked, he eliminated me as a threat. Which means he can also prove your innocence, if we can get him to talk. Eduardo Ramirez will never talk. He has too much to lose. Everyone has a price, Valentina. Everyone has a pressure point." Alejandro's jaw set with determination. "I have spent my entire career finding those points and exploiting them. Let me do what I do best." "And what about the charges against me? The trial?" "My lawyers are filing motions to delay. The evidence they have is circumstantial, and the prosecution knows it. They are hoping you will accept a plea deal and disappear quietly." His hand moved toward hers across the table, stopping just short of touching. "But you are not going to do that. You are going to fight, and you are going to win, because I will not rest until every person who hurt you and my daughter is exposed and destroyed." The passion in his voice warmed something that had gone cold inside her. In that sterile room, with a guard watching and the weight of false accusations pressing down, she felt something she had not felt in 5 long years. "Hope. I will fight," she said quietly. For Sophia, for the other children, for myself, and for us. The question hung in the air, fragile and precious. She looked at this man, this arrogant, powerful man who had somehow become her ally, her champion, her what? She did not have words for what he had become. She only knew that the thought of losing him hurt almost as much as the thought of losing her freedom. There is an us? Ah, there has been an us since the moment you walked through my door and refused to be intimidated. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. I may have been too proud to see it at first, too focused on my daughter, too damaged from Carolina's death, too convinced that I did not need anyone. But you changed that. You changed everything. The guard cleared his throat meaningfully. Their time was almost up. Get me out of here, she said, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. And then we can talk about what comes next. I will. I swear to you on my daughter's life. I will. The breakthrough came on the 7th day of Valentina's detention. Alejandro's investigators had been working around the clock, following the money trail through shell companies and offshore accounts. They had uncovered a network that stretched from Mexico City to Monterrey to Guadalajara, touching some of the most powerful families in the country. Children of CEOs, politicians, judges, all had been targeted with the implant technology, their pain used as leverage for corporate deals, political favors, and outright extortion. But the key to everything was Dr. Eduardo Ramirez. He has a daughter, Alejandro's head of security reported during an emergency meeting. 32 years old, lives in San Miguel de Allende with her husband and 2 children. According to our sources, she has no idea what her father has been doing. She believes he retired honorably from medicine to focus on research. What are you suggesting? Not what you think. The security chief slid a folder across the table. We do not need to threaten his family. We just need him to believe we might. Eduardo Ramirez has spent his entire career protecting his reputation. If he thinks his daughter might learn the truth about what he has done to children, about the suffering he has caused for profit, he will talk. He will sing like a canary at dawn. The confrontation took place at Eduardo's luxury apartment in Polanco, less than 2 kilometers from Alejandro's own mansion. The irony was not lost on anyone. 2 powerful men who had lived as neighbors, one building an empire of legitimate business, the other building an empire of suffering. Alejandro went alone, despite his security team's protests. This was personal. This was about the woman who had saved his daughter, the woman he was beginning to realize he loved, the woman who was rotting in a cell because of this man's lies. Eduardo Ramirez opened the door with a look of mild curiosity that quickly shifted to recognition and then to fear. Señor Mendoza, I was not expecting. I know everything. Alejandro pushed past him into the apartment, not waiting for an invitation. The implants, the network, the families you have been extorting for years. Your role in destroying Valentina Reyes's career. Eduardo's face went pale, but his voice remained steady. I do not know what you are talking about. Really? Then perhaps your daughter in San Miguel de Allende would like to see the evidence. Or perhaps the media would be interested. Or perhaps... Alejandro turned to face him directly. The families of the children you tortured would like to know who was responsible for their suffering. You have no proof. I have financial records tracing payments from the Swiss firm directly to accounts you control. I have testimony from 3 former nurses who assisted in implant procedures under your supervision. I have documentation showing that you were the one who developed the specific technology used on my daughter. Alejandro stepped closer, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. And I have a very, very strong motivation to make sure every piece of this evidence reaches exactly the right people. The silence stretched between them. Eduardo's mask of composure cracked slightly, revealing the frightened old man beneath. What do you want? The truth. A full confession detailing every procedure, every victim, every person involved in the network. Names, dates, locations, everything. Alejandro pulled out his phone. And you will start by exonerating Valentina Reyes. You will tell the authorities that your testimony against her 5 years ago was false, that she discovered genuine evidence of criminal activity, and that you destroyed her career to protect yourself and your associates. If I do that, I will go to prison. Yes, you will. Alejandro's smile held no warmth. But if you do not do that, I will make sure your daughter knows exactly what kind of monster raised her. I will make sure she knows that her comfortable life in San Miguel was built on the screams of children. I will destroy not just your freedom, but your legacy, your memory, everything you pretend to care about. Eduardo Ramirez was a coward. This had always been his fundamental nature. Brilliant, yes, but ultimately driven by self-preservation above all else. He had betrayed Valentina because it was safer than telling the truth. He had participated in the network because the money was good and the risks seemed manageable. Now faced with the complete destruction of everything he valued, he made the only choice a coward could make. He talked. For 3 hours, he detailed the entire operation. The network had started 15 years ago, originally as a research project into pain management technology. But somewhere along the way, someone had realized that the ability to cause untraceable suffering in children of wealthy families was worth far more than any legitimate medical application. The Swiss firm provided the technology. Operatives like Mariana Villanueva identified targets and arranged access. Eduardo refined the procedures and trained others to perform the implantations. "How many children?" Alejandro asked, his voice hollow. 23 that I know of, possibly more. 23 children, 23 families torn apart by mysterious suffering, 23 innocent souls tortured for money and power. And my mother? The question came out before Alejandro could stop it. What was Elena Mendoza's role? Eduardo hesitated. Your mother was one of the original investors. She helped identify potential targets through her social connections. I do not believe she participated directly in any procedures, but she knew. She always knew. The betrayal was absolute. His own mother had known that her granddaughter was being tortured and had done nothing. Worse, she had been complicit in creating the system that made such torture possible. One more question. Alejandro's voice was barely audible. Why Sofia? Why my daughter specifically? Eduardo looked away. There were debts, business rivalries. Your acquisition of the Garza hotel chain last year cost certain people a great deal of money. They wanted you distracted, weakened, unable to focus on your next targets. He paused, and there was pressure from your mother. She wanted you dependent on her again, wanted you to need her help with Sofia's condition. She thought if she could position herself as the only one who could find proper medical care. Alejandro heard nothing more. His mind had gone blank with rage and grief, the twin emotions battling for dominance. His mother had allowed his daughter to suffer for nearly a year, all to regain control over his life. The woman who had given him birth had watched Sofia scream in agony night after night and said nothing. He recorded every word of Eduardo's confession. Then he called his lawyers and instructed them to deliver copies to the prosecutors handling Valentina's case, to the Medical Licensing Board, and to 3 different investigative journalists known for their integrity. The dominoes began to fall. Valentina was released from custody within 48 hours. The charges were dropped, her record expunged, and formal apologies issued by officials who suddenly remembered that they had always believed in her innocence. Dr. Eduardo Ramirez was arrested. Mariana Villanueva was extradited from Switzerland. And Elena Mendoza de Vega, matriarch of one of Mexico's most prominent families, was taken into custody at her Lomas residence while cameras captured every moment. Valentina walked out of the detention center into bright afternoon sunlight, blinking against the glare. Alejandro was waiting by his car, Sofia bouncing excitedly beside him. "Valentina!" The little girl broke away from her father and ran toward her, launching herself into Valentina's arms. "You came back! Papa said you would come back, and you did!" Valentina held her tight, tears streaming down her face. "I promised I would, did I not? I always keep my promises." Over Sophia's head, her eyes met Alejandro's. In his gaze, she saw everything: the exhaustion of the past weeks, the triumph of their victory, and something deeper, something that made her heart race. "Welcome home," he said softly. Home. It was a word she had not used in 5 years, a concept she had given up on ever experiencing again. But looking at this man and this child, she realized that home was not a place, it was people, it was belonging, it was this. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything. I should be thanking you. You saved my daughter. You saved me." Sophia pulled back and looked between them with the devastating perceptiveness of childhood. "Are you going to kiss now? In movies, this is when people kiss." Alejandro laughed, a real laugh, full and genuine. "What do you think, Valentina? Should we follow the movie rules?" She should have said something sensible. Something about taking things slowly, about processing everything that had happened, about not rushing into emotional decisions. But she was tired of being sensible. She was tired of protecting herself from hope and joy and love. "I think," she said, stepping closer to him, "that Sophia is very wise." The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, two people who had been through too much to take anything for granted. But then his arms came around her, and her hands found his face, and the world fell away. There was only this moment, this man, this feeling of finally coming home after a very long journey. "Ew," Sophia giggled. "Okay, that is enough kissing. Can we go get ice cream now?" They broke apart, laughing. "Ice cream it is," Alejandro agreed. "But first," he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I know this is fast. I know we should probably wait, date properly, do things in the traditional order. But I have learned something in the past few weeks. Life is too short and too uncertain to waste time on propriety." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, elegant, understated, perfect. "I am not asking you to answer today. I am asking you to consider it, to think about building a life with me and Sophia, to think about being a family." Valentina stared at the ring, her mind racing. It was too fast, it was too soon. Everything about this defied logic and reason. But then she looked at Sophia's hopeful face, at Alejandro's nervous expression, and she realized that the best things in life rarely made logical sense. They simply felt right. "Ask me properly," she said. He dropped to one knee right there in the parking lot, surrounded by cars and concrete, with his daughter cheering beside him. "Valentina Reyes, will you marry me?" "Yes," the word came out without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you." The wedding took place 3 months later, in the garden of the Polanco mansion where everything had begun. It was not the elaborate society affair that Elena Mendoza would have insisted upon. There were no 500 guests from important families, no designer gown worth a fortune, no political dignitaries making appearances for the cameras. Instead, there were 50 people who actually mattered: Lupita and the household staff who had become family, the investigators who had helped uncover the truth, the families of other children who had been victims, and a few close friends who had stood by Alejandro through the darkest times. The garden had been transformed with simple white flowers and strings of soft lights. A string quartet played gently as the sun began to set over the city. And at the end of the aisle, Alejandro waited in a simple grey suit, his eyes fixed on the doorway where Valentina would appear. Sophia served as flower girl, scattering petals with enthusiastic abandon and occasionally stopping to wave at guests she recognized. She wore a white dress with a pink sash, her own choice, and her dark curls were adorned with tiny roses that matched her father's boutonniere. When Valentina finally appeared, the music seemed to fade into background noise. She wore a cream-colored gown that flowed around her like water, elegant without being ostentatious. Her hair was loose around her shoulders, the way Alejandro preferred it, and she carried a simple bouquet of white roses. But it was her face that made his heart stop, radiant, peaceful, glowing with a joy that had seemed impossible just a few months ago. This was not the haunted woman who had appeared on his doorstep seeking employment. This was a woman who had reclaimed her life, her purpose, her capacity for love. "You are beautiful," he whispered as she reached him, taking her hands in his. "You are biased. Absolutely and completely correct." The ceremony was brief but meaningful. They had written their own vows, words that spoke of second chances and unexpected beginnings, of finding family in the most unlikely circumstances. "I came to this house looking for a job," Valentina said, her voice steady despite the tears glistening in her eyes. "I found so much more. I found a daughter who taught me that courage comes in small packages. I found a purpose that reminded me why I became a doctor in the first place. And I found you, a man who looked past my failures and saw the person I could still become. I promised to spend the rest of my life being worthy of that faith." Alejandro squeezed her hands. "I thought I knew what strength meant. I had built an empire, survived tragedy, raised a daughter on my own. But you showed me that true strength is vulnerability, the courage to ask for help, to admit when you are wrong, to let another person into the places you have kept locked away. I promise to keep learning that lesson every day for the rest of our lives together." And these, when the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Sophia's cheer was the loudest of all. The reception flowed naturally from the ceremony, with guests mingling in the garden as servers passed champagne and appetizers. Lupita had insisted on preparing many of the dishes herself, traditional Mexican recipes that she claimed were necessary for good luck in a marriage. "I never thought I would see this day," she confided to Valentina during a quiet moment. "When you first arrived, I thought you would last maybe a week. Another stranger who would run away from the Signor's intensity and Sophia's suffering. But you stayed, you fought, and now look at us. We are a family." "Yes." Lupita's eyes glistened. "Finally, this house feels like a home again." As the evening progressed, Alejandro found himself standing apart from the crowd, watching his wife and daughter dance together on the improvised dance floor. The sight filled him with something he had almost forgotten how to feel: pure, uncomplicated happiness. "Papa!" Sophia broke away and ran toward him. "Come dance with us!" "Valentina says you have 2 left feet, but I told her that is silly, because I have seen your feet, and they are both normal." He laughed and allowed himself to be pulled onto the floor. "Did she really say that?" "I may have mentioned that you have certain challenges in the rhythm department," Valentina admitted with a smile. "But I also said it was endearing." "Endearing! I will take it." They danced together, the 3 of them, while guests watched with indulgent smiles. It was not graceful or choreographed. It was messy and silly and perfect. Later, after Sophia had been carried to bed by Lupita, protesting sleepily that she was not tired, Alejandro and Valentina sat together on the terrace where they had shared so many late-night conversations. "I received word from the prosecutors today," he said quietly. "The trials are proceeding. Eduardo's confession has opened floodgates. Other victims are coming forward. Other operatives are making deals to testify. And your mother?" His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "She will face charges along with the rest. I visited her last week, hoping for some explanation, some sign of remorse." He shook his head. "There was nothing. She blamed everyone but herself, said I was destroying the family name. I am sorry. Do not be." He reached for her hand. "The family she wanted me to protect was a fiction, built on suffering and secrets. This," he gestured at the garden, at the mansion, at the life they were building. "This is real. This is worth protecting." What about Sophia? Does she understand?" "She understands that Abuela made bad choices and has to face consequences. She is young enough to accept that without the complicated grief adults feel." He paused. "She also told me very seriously that you are a much better grandmother figure, and she hopes you will make pancakes on Sunday mornings, like real families do." Valentina laughed. "I can manage pancakes." "She also wants a dog, and a little brother or sister, and a trip to Disney. She has many opinions about how this family should operate. She gets that from her father, probably. He pulled her closer, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. But she gets her courage from you. The way she stood up during the trials, testified about what she remembered from that party. I could never have asked her to do that. She volunteered because she wanted other children to be safe. She is remarkable. She is ours. The word hung in the air, simple and profound. Ours, not his daughter and her charge, but their child together. A family. The stars emerged slowly over Mexico City, diamond points against the velvet sky. Somewhere in the distance, traffic hummed and music played, and millions of people lived their lives, unaware of the small miracle happening on this terrace. I used to think my life was over, Valentina said softly. After Monterey, after I lost everything, I believed I would never matter again. That I would just exist, going through motions, until time finally ended my meaningless existence. And now? She turned to face him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Now I have everything I never dared to hope for. A daughter who loves me, a husband who believes in me, a purpose that matters, a future worth fighting for. We fought hard for this future. Yes, and I would do it all again. Every moment of suffering, every setback, every dark night of doubt, if it led me here, to you, to Sophia, to this moment. She kissed him gently. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for walking through my door and refusing to leave. Doom. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be trials to attend, testimony to give, a public scandal to weather. Elena Mendoza's arrest had sent shockwaves through Mexican high society, and the repercussions would take years to fully resolve, but they would face it together. A family forged not by blood, but by choice, by love, by the simple refusal to surrender to darkness. In the bedroom they now shared, Sophia slept peacefully. No screaming, no pain, no mysterious burning in her foot. Just the deep, untroubled sleep of a child who knows she is loved and protected. And in the garden below, where flowers bloomed and lights twinkled, and the remnants of a wedding celebration waited to be cleared away, life went on. Beautiful, complicated, precious life. Valentina Mendoza, she was still getting used to the name, leaned her head against her husband's shoulder and smiled. "What are you thinking?" Alejandro asked. "That I never believed in happy endings. And now I believe in happy beginnings." She looked up at him. "This is not an ending, Alejandro. This is the start of everything." He kissed her forehead, holding her close. "Then let us make it count." And they did. In the years that followed, Valentina Mendoza would return to medicine, her license fully restored, her reputation rehabilitated. She would establish a foundation dedicated to identifying and helping children who were victims of medical abuse, using the fortune Alejandro gladly provided to ensure that no child ever suffered as Sophia had suffered. Alejandro would restructure his company, moving away from the cutthroat tactics that had once defined his success toward a more ethical approach that honored the values his wife had taught him. The Mendoza Corporation became known not just for its profitability, but for its integrity. Sophia would grow into a confident, compassionate young woman who remembered the dark year of her childhood, not with trauma, but with gratitude for the mysterious nanny who had appeared when all hope seemed lost and refused to stop fighting until she found the truth. And on Sunday mornings, without fail, there would be pancakes. But all of that was still to come, for now there was only this moment, two people who had found each other against impossible odds, standing together under the stars, ready to begin their life. The truth had set them free. Love had brought them home. And they lived, not happily ever after, because real life is never that simple, but happily, genuinely, fully together. The end.